Hello everybody and welcome back. My name is Mel and today we find out how well or how terribly I am doing at the Our Fantasy Bingo card this year. If you don't know what Our Fantasy Bingo is, it is a Reddit thread that is a bingo card that comes out at the beginning of April and runs until the end of March every year. There's an easy mode, there's a hard mode, and it's really just encouraging people to get out of their comfort zones, read books that they wouldn't normally read, and find new books that they may have never heard of. Rachel is the one that told me and Cassidy about it. I made a TBR at the beginning of the year. I don't remember what was on that TBR and I don't know how I'm doing. So let's check in because we are now midway through January. I only have until the beginning of April to finish this off and I want to know where I stand and how scared I should be. So I guess let's just go through the different prompts and we can talk about the books that I've read that fit the prompts already and whether or not they're hard mode. And then the ones that I still need to read and maybe I can get some recommendations on what to read from you guys. The very first prompt is to read a book from the Our Fantasy's top LGBTQ list, and the hard mode is a book or a series that has received 10 or less votes. So for this one, I actually went and looked at the list, scrolled all the way down to 10, and then looked at the votes under that, what books counted for that, and I saw that Ninth Reign is on that list, and Ninth Reign in the Winnowing Flame trilogy actually fits a lot of different prompts on this board, but you can only use the author one time per the board, so this is the only time you're going to see Jen Williams on this list. But it got 4 votes, and the Ninth Reign is sci-fi, maybe a little horror fantasy blend story that involves vampires and slug-like aliens. It's a really cool story. If you guys are interested, there are live shows over on Covers with Cassidy's channel from where the Backlist Book Club read this trilogy. I definitely think it's worth a read, but it counts for this prompt. Next up, we have Weird Ecology. And the hard mode for this one is if it's just not written by Jeff Vandermeer or China Miéville, I think is maybe how you say that. I'm also going to do another Backlist Book Club pick for this one, and that's Call It the Bone Chips by R.J. Barker. This one has a weird ecology in the fact that I didn't know it was a weird ecology, and Reddit had to tell me. Apparently in this series or this world, there are not really trees. There are things that are kind of like trees, but they're not colored like trees, and so they're not actually trees, ergo making it a weird ecology. I didn't pick up on that throughout the series. I had to be told that, but Bone Chips has a weird ecology. And that crosses off hard mode because it is not Jeff Vandermeer or China Miéville. Next up, we have 2 or more authors, and the hard mode is going to be to use 3 or more authors. I don't have a book for the hard mode. I could do Relic, which is by Preston and Child, but I don't have anything that has 3 or more authors. I guess I could do a short story collection for this, but short story collections, as you know, are not really my thing. So if you can think of a sci-fi, fantasy, or horror book that you think I would enjoy that has 3 or more authors, please let me know down in the comments because this is a struggle for me. Next on the list was historical sci-fi and fantasy, and the hard mode for this one was not set in Britain or Ireland. And I think for this one I'm going to do Song for the Void, which is one of the indies that I read this year for the SPFBO. This one's going to count for hard mode because I believe that it's set on like the China side of things. There are British involved, but it's about one of the Chinese wars, and I think it would count. It's absolutely historical. To me, it leans more horror than it does fantasy, but it's still in that speculative fiction world, which counts for this bingo card. Then we have a book that is set in space, and the hard mode is one of the main characters is not from Earth. This one was relatively easy. I'm going to be using one of the Expanse series books, so we're just going to go with Cibola Burn by James S.A. Corey. There are a couple of the main characters in this book that are either not from Earth, they're from like outlying planets, or they were born and grew up on Mars, so I think this would absolutely count. Next up we have a standalone, and I had to go digging for this because it can't be on the list of like favorite standalones for Our Fantasy, so I had to go through their list and do like a quick Control F to see if the book that I was considering using was on this list, and the original one that I was going to use, The Library at Mount Char, was on the list. However, I also read The Luminous Dead by Caitlin Sterling for that video as well, which is an underwater horror sci-fi, and it should work for this because I didn't see it on the list anywhere, so fingers crossed that I did not overlook it, but I think this one will work really well. The next prompt on the bingo board is anti-hero. This one is one that I am struggling with because I can come up with anti-heroes, but the hard mode is for it to be a YA book, When I was doing a little digging into the recommendation threads for the Reddit, I found that the Scholomance series came up several times, and I guess I knew that that was YA, but I think I always kind of thought of it as a YA new adult blend in my mind. But everything has it listed as young adult, and I read The Golden Enclaves this year. So I think that that one is going to be what I use for this prompt to hit off hard mode, but if you guys have any other suggestions, let me know in case that ends up not working out. Then we have a cool weapon, but this cool weapon, in order to fit hard mode, has to also be named. And I am struggling with this one a little bit because obviously Brandon Sanderson is the popular choice, but I have not read any of the Stormlight series this year, and I don't know for sure that I'll get to Oathbringer before the end of March. Cassidy said she thought the Umbral Storm would count for this one, which I will definitely be reading before the beginning of April because it's for SPFBO. But if you guys have any other suggestions of something that you think that I would enjoy that has a cool named weapon, I always want books with cool named weapons, so let me know down in the comments below. That's one that I'm planning to read but have not yet read. Then we have a book that has a name in the title, and it's hard mode if the name is both the first and the last name. I got a sad awakening on this one because I had put down The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, and then Cassidy was like, I thought you read that really long time ago. Man, time flies. Well, then of course I went back and looked it up, and what do you know? I read it in March, not May, like I thought. So since I started it before April 1st, it can't count for this 2022 bingo card. So I'm crap out of luck on that one. I could do Lies of Locke Lamora, but I have started and DNF that book twice. I do plan to go back to it, but I'm just not sure that now is my time or my moment. It can't just have the person's name to hit hard mode though. It has to be the first and the last name, and that's why I'm struggling. So let me know below if you got any ideas. Then we have author uses initials, and hard mode is if it is a pseudonym. This one I thought was going to be really hard, and then I went digging through our Reddit suggestions, and they were like, oh, it hits hard mode if it's something like this. For example, T. Kingfisher. And I was like, oh, I had no idea that that was a pseudonym, and obviously I should have, but I didn't. So Swordheart by T. Kingfisher is what I'm going to be using for this prompt. That one was easy, and I thought it was going to be really hard. Next up, we have published in 2022 and bonus if it is a debut novel. For this one, I'm going to be using Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. This one, both for the self-published and the tour version, would count as a 2022 release. I think one was February and one was like June or July. And it is his debut written novel. Otherwise, anything that he's ever done has just been narrated. I believe this is the first one that he has ever written himself. That works perfectly for this space. Next space, we have urban fantasy, and hard mode is if there is an LGBTQ plus point of view. You can use one reread. So I will either be using Ninth House because I reread it at the beginning of this year, or if I get to it in time, I'll be using Hellbent instead. Our main character, Alex, is bi, I believe, so definitely counts. It's very much so an urban fantasy. Works perfectly for this prompt. Next up, we have Set in Africa with African Heritage. This is one that I may need a little bit of help from you guys on. Originally, I had The Killing Moon by N.K. Jemisin down, but I'm not sure exactly how she identifies, and so I don't want to obviously misinterpret that, and I can't find it labeled anywhere, so I probably won't be using that one for hard mode. I believe The Murders of Molly Southbourne, written by Tade Thompson, would count for this because he is a Nigerian British writer, and this is a really short horror novella. I think it's got a little bit of sci-fi that I've been really interested in, so I may end up using this for that prompt. I know it would also count for the first and last name. And I did want to mention that the first and last name I completely forgot about. I may end up doing the new S.A. Checkerboardy, The Adventures of Amani Al-Safari. I think that that is both a first and a last name, and completely forgot that that was coming out at the end of February. So I think that that one's going to be what I choose for that because I'm so very excited. But anyway, I digress. The Murders of Molly Southbourne, I think, is what I'm going to end up doing for the African Heritage, but let me know if I'm incorrect or if you have any other suggestions down in the comments. Then we have a non-human protagonist, and bonus points if it is a non-human protagonist that does not have humanoid features. So like, for example, Murderbot wouldn't count because Murderbot looks like a human even though it's not a human. So for this one, I think I'm going to be using Project Hail Mary. Rocky. That's all I'm going to say because I don't want to give any more away because it's a little bit of a spoiler. So just Rocky, it counts. Moving on. Next we have Wibbly Wobbly Timey Wimey, and the hard mode is no time travel. That one is hard because everything with time feels like it involves time travel. but I think I'm going to be able to use the Cruel Gods for this one. This series is one that I read for SPFBO by Trudy Skies, and it involves time, but in a very unique way. It's definitely not involving time travel. It is surrounding a clock that dictates like when certain portals open to different worlds, but then there ends up being a 13th hour. It's really cool. I enjoyed it a lot, but I definitely think that it would count for this prompt as well. Then we have a mental health rep, and the hard mode is just that it can't be Stormlight, which I think is really funny because when I think of mental health rep, I think of Robin Hobb, not Brandon Sanderson. So therefore, I'm just going to use one of the Robin Hobbs that I read last year. I read a lot of them, mostly the Brain Wilds, but I also read Tawny Man, I believe, in 2022 as well. So take your pick of any of the Hobb books that I read last year. Next up, we have 5 SFF short stories, and then the bonus is to read an anthology or collection. I did double check the thread to make sure that this didn't need to have multiple authors, and I don't see where that's mentioned. It just has to be an entire collection that at least includes 5 stories. So I have 2 potential options for this one. One, Bex from Bewitched Bex was so kind enough to give me Rivers of Silver by S.A. Chakraborty for my birthday, and I don't know for 100% if that's got exactly 5 or more in it, so I need to check, but that's an option. Arcanum Unbound by Brandon Sanderson is also an option, and there are tons of anthologies out there, so if you have a favorite, let me know, because that's not a genre or a type of book that I read very often. So if you've got some suggestions for me, put them down in the comments. You know the drill. All right, we're getting there slowly but surely. One of the other, I think this is the last prompt that I have not read a book for already, and that is self-published or indie, but it has to have 100 or less ratings on Goodreads. Originally, I read this as reviews, and that was a whole lot easier than ratings because people tend to mark the rating and not review the book a whole lot more often than they write a review. So I think I'm going to end up going with Mysterious Ways. This is one of the books for SPFBO that I will be reading before April. I feel like you guys have heard me say that 1,000 times already, but it only has like 20 something ratings I think on Goodreads so far, so it would absolutely count. I've got to read it anyway. Then we have an award finalist and somebody that did not win, and the hard mode is a Not Nebula or Hugo award. This I thought was going to be a whole lot harder than it turned out to be. Somebody suggested the Goodreads Choice Awards, so that would be an option. I think I wrote down a winner. And I didn't mean to. I meant to write down a not winner, but one that was nominated, so I do need to go back and look through. But if you got anything that you think that I would really enjoy that did not win, but was a finalist of a award at any point, it didn't seem like it had to be anything that was more recent, let me know. And I'm sure that I can find something for this because there are a lot of books nominated for a lot of different awards out there. Then we have a BIPOC author and bonus if it is an Indigenous author. And I thought I still had the book, but I can't find it. I'm going to be going with King of Battle and Blood by Scarlett St. Clair. Scarlett St. Clair is a Native American author, and I really had been wanting to get to one of her fantasy romance series because I'd heard such good things about the Persephone and Hades series. I didn't absolutely love King of Battle and Blood, but I can see why people do love it, so I'm interested to potentially continue in that series. Okay, next up we have Shapeshifters, and the hard prompt is not a wolf or a dog shifter. This one I think I'm going to end up using the Shadow of What Was Lost or An Echo of Things to Come. Take your pick, whichever one you want to use, because there is a shape-shifting component to these books that does not at all involve a wolf or a dog. I can't really tell you any more than that because that would be massive spoilers, but there is a shape-shifting component, so it counts. Then we have no ifs, ands, or buts, and the hard mode is if it has 3 or more words, and for this one I am going to do Silver Under Nightfall by Ren Chiapeko. It doesn't have an if, an and, an or, a but, an of, any of those types of words in it, and it is 3 words. If I'm incorrectly interpreting that and it's got to be 4 or more words, let me know. I'll find a different book, but I think that I am interpreting that one correctly. Then we have Family Matters, and it is the hard mode if you can find 3 generations in the same book. For this one, I'm going to be doing Voice of War by Zach Argyle. It involves a guy, his mother, and then his newly born son. So 3 generations. It's a very family-oriented story, and I think it works beautifully for this prompt. Next, we have book club or read-along, and bonus points if it is the current selection of one of the R-Reddit book clubs. I just happened to get really, really lucky, went and looked, and Dead Silence is the month of January's pick. So I read Dead Silence at the very, very end of December, and you have to participate in the discussions. So I went, read a couple of the comments about Dead Silence, what people were thinking about it, left my own comment, and I feel very official in the Reddit community by making a comment. I'm very proud of myself, and I think Rachel would be too. And last but not least, we have Revolutions and Rebellions, where that is the main focus of the story. So I am going to be using, where did it go? Ha! Winds of Strife by Yuji Gutman. This is very much so a Revolutions and Rebellions type story. That is what our main character is striving to achieve. It has some morally gray characters. It's got a hard magic system involving emotions. I had a great time with this book, and I think that it needs more love, so check it out, and it works great for this prompt. Okay guys, so I think that those are all of the spaces on the Our Fantasy Bingo board for 2022. So far, I still need to read the short stories. I still need to read the self-published or indie. I still need to read Name in the Title, Cool Weapon, and 3 or more authors if I'm trying to hit hard mode for all of those. I still need to find books for 3 or plus authors. I think that that's it. I think that I have a book for most of them. I just need to read a couple of them. So we'll touch base again in April once the new bingo board is put out. We'll see how I did on this bingo board, and this is a lot of fun, so I'm hoping to be able to continue to do it in future years. Let me know down in the comments below if you have any suggestions for the prompts that I am missing or struggling with, as well as if you are participating this year, and if you need any help with suggestions or ideas, then let us know what you're struggling with, and hopefully the community can help you out as well. As always, links to my Instagram, Patreon, Twitter, and Goodreads are all down in the description box below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up, subscribe if you wanna, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!